Aloha, I'm Mina Van Dyken, MD from Out of the Doldrums. On this channel, we love talking about different foods and how they can benefit overall health. Today is a special one. We get to talk about the food of the gods. Yep, you heard me right. A food so precious that it was once considered the food of the gods. Yeah, I'm talking about cacao, which comes from the cocoa tree. Catch. People have been using cacao for centuries. There's even chromatographic analysis of pottery residues found in Mesoamerica that demonstrate that cacao beverages were being made and consumed before 1000 BC. Cacao was brought to Europe in the 16th century, and in 1737, Linnaeus, the father of modern taxonomy, named the cocoa tree Theobroma, which literally means food of the gods. More recently, there have been several studies touting the benefits of cacao. In a nutshell, researchers have found an association between cacao and a lower risk of many chronic diseases, such as cardiovascular disease, metabolic disorders like diabetes, and possibly even some anti-cancer activity. On top of this, consumption of cacao also seems to help with cognitive function, visual function, reducing fat mass and obesity, improving skeletal muscle and physical performance, as well as having antiviral properties. Last but definitely not least, cacao could protect the skin from UV light and increase skin elasticity. Okay, before we get started, I have to make a really important point about the cacao we're talking about here. We're talking about cacao and cocoa polyphenols, not particularly chocolate, and especially not the average chocolate bar that you can buy at the grocery store. Those have lost pretty much all their health benefits and are actually not the best thing to eat due to their highly processed nature. They've got high saturated fat and added sugars. So when you listen to this video, think cacao and cocoa polyphenols coming from things like whole beans, cacao nibs, or even pure 100% cocoa powder. Don't think chocolate candy bars. Okay, so now that we've done some housekeeping and discussed all the caveats, let's take some time to review cacao and discuss why it owns the lofty title of food of the gods. Theobroma cacao is a small but economically important tree. It's an evergreen, and it grows to be 4 to 8 meters tall. It's native to the tropical region of the Americas, but today it's grown worldwide. The major producers of cacao today are Ivory Coast and Ghana. They grow over 60% of cocoa used worldwide. So what's in the cacao bean? To start, lots of fiber, 26 to 40%. Lipids, or fats, 10 to 24%. Proteins, 15 to 20%, carbohydrates, 15%, and about 2% is micronutrients, including vitamins and minerals like phosphorus, calcium, potassium, sodium, magnesium, zinc, copper, and vitamins A, B, and E. So each cacao seed contains a significant amount of fat in the form of cocoa butter, and polyphenols as well, which make up about 10% of the whole bean's dry weight. These polyphenols are mainly a polyphenol called epicatechin. When beans are harvested, they undergo a fermentation process, which is crucial for the development of other nutritional constituents, as well as for the development of the chocolate flavor that we all know and oh so much love. When the bean ferments, the color changes from purple to brown. Polyphenols undergo many reactions during this time. Epicatechin diffuses from its storage shells and undergoes oxidation and polymerization reactions to form complex tannins and phytochemicals. Here are some examples of the phytochemicals and phytochemical groups found in cacao. Methylxanthines, flavanols like procyanidin and quercetin, anthocyanins, flavones, flavanones, phenolic acid, resveratrol, caffeine, and even nicotine. So what happens when we consume that cacao? How does our body metabolize it? There's a couple of things about this that I find fascinating. The first is the interaction that cacao has with our microbiome. Following ingestion of cacao, flavanols remain stable in the digestive system until they reach the small intestine. That means the acidity in the stomach does not seem to affect absorption of the beneficial compounds seen in cacao. There are some compounds that get absorbed in the small intestine, but the majority of compounds actually make it intact to the large intestine, where they are metabolized by, you guessed it, our gut microbiota. It appears that only about 5 to 10% of the polyphenols seen in cacao are absorbed in the small intestine. The remainder is absorbed in the large intestine. So cacao flavanols function as a prebiotic, and it's these metabolites that are created by our gut microbiome that give us health benefits. One study demonstrated that a diet high in cocoa flavanols for 4 weeks increased bacterial counts of bifidobacteria, enterococcus, and lactobacillus strains in the colon. These are all healthy bacteria. At the same time, Clostridia, which can be a harmful bacteria, was decreased. So consumption of flavanol-rich foods may support gut health through their ability to exert prebiotic actions. The second thing I find fascinating in regards to cacao processing and metabolism is its effect on nitric oxide. If you watch this channel, it's no secret that I love anything and all things related to nitric oxide. In fact, this channel has a whole playlist on videos dedicated to nitric oxide. The link is in the description below. So nitric oxide has many benefits, but important for our discussion today, it relaxes blood vessels, promotes blood flow, and reduces blood pressure. The flavanols seen in cacao seem to promote nitric oxide formation, and as a result, lower the blood pressure. How exactly does it do this? One of the flavanols, epicatechin, appears to increase levels of nitric oxide synthase, an enzyme that makes nitric oxide. Higher nitric oxide equals more blood flow, which is a good thing. Okay, so let's quickly review the main health benefits of cacao. Health benefit number 1, cardiovascular health. Research suggests an association between higher cacao intake and lower risk of cardiovascular disease. It also shows a protective effect on risk markers for cardiovascular disease like blood pressure. It does this by acting on the endothelium, the cells that line our blood vessels. When the endothelium is functioning correctly, it's able to easily dilate or increase its diameter to increase blood flow to the areas that need it. A dysfunctional endothelium means the body is unable to adequately dilate its blood vessels, and a dysfunctional endothelium has been associated with cardiovascular disease. The effect of cacao on endothelium is so profound that in 2012, the European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, claimed for the first time that a, quote, cause and effect relationship may be established between the consumption of cocoa flavanols and maintenance of normal endothelium-dependent vasodilatation. So, to this end, one study noted an increase in coronary blood flow, or blood flow to the heart, following ingestion of dark chocolate in healthy men. So let's take a moment to talk about blood pressure. Studies have shown that if you can reduce your systolic blood pressure, that top number, by 5 millimeters of mercury, you can decrease your risk of cardiovascular events by about 20% over a 5-year period. This is great news. Even if you can drop your blood pressure by a small amount, you get pretty good protection against heart disease. There's been quite a few well-done clinical trials looking at cacao intake and blood pressure. Most studies show a drop in blood pressure by anywhere from 2 to 4 millimeters of mercury. That definitely helps when we look at overall risk of heart disease. And interestingly, this effect seems to be more pronounced in people who have hypertension or pre-hypertension. It doesn't seem to reduce systolic blood pressure so much in people who have normal blood pressure. Cardiovascular benefits don't end at just the heart. The peripheral blood vessels benefit too. Have you heard of peripheral artery disease of the distal blood vessels? This severely limits the quality of life for people that are affected. They can't walk very far without having debilitating pain in their legs, something called claudication. Take a look at this study. It gave participants with peripheral artery disease a cacao drink for 6 months and saw a huge improvement in their 6-minute walking distance tests. They also did muscle biopsies that showed improvement in blood flow to the calf muscles. Benefit number 2, neurologic. Okay, so there's the obvious, that cocoa polyphenols have been shown to increase blood flow to the brain or brain perfusion via nitric oxide production. More oxygen to the brain equals better cognition and mental function or processing. One study showed that in healthy young people, cocoa flavanols appeared to enhance blood flow to the brain, as well as increase cerebral oxygen levels. But it's more nuanced than just perfusion. There are some rodent studies that show that epicatechin can get into the brain, so it's hopeful that some of the benefits of cocoa flavanols can be seen in the neurologic system. Also related to neurologic benefit, cacao seems to exert an anti-inflammatory effect in the gut, which indirectly could cause gut bacteria to create more serotonin, which helps stabilize the mood. What really fascinates me, though, is the effect of cacao on cognition. There is preliminary evidence demonstrating that high doses of cocoa flavanols could improve cognitive function in elderly people that have mild cognitive impairment. Some studies report that cacao supplementation improves processing speed, executive function, and working memory. It's thought that this could be due to an increase in BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor, as well as an increase in cerebral blood flow to memory-related brain areas. There is an area of the brain called the hippocampus, and we know that both size and function of the hippocampus decreases with human aging and cognitive function. Healthy older adults who consumed cacao for 3 months had a greater cerebral blood volume in the dentate gyrus, which is a region in the hippocampus. This increase in cerebral blood volume was correlated with improved performance on memory tasks. This is all very promising, but there's no doubt that we need more studies on cocoa flavanols and cognition, particularly in the area of dementia prevention. Health benefit number 3, improvement in blood sugar levels and diabetes. Multiple studies have shown that people with high intake of chocolate products and cocoa-derived flavanols experience a reduced risk of developing type 2 diabetes, even after controlling for sugar intake, diet quality, and other aspects of the diet. The flavanols in cacao appear to improve insulin sensitivity. They do this by improving blood flow to the muscle via increased nitric oxide. This is a little-known property of nitric oxide. The nitric oxide-mediated increase in blood flow to skeletal muscle is responsible for as much as 40% of increased glucose uptake in response to insulin stimulation. So to rephrase, you eat cacao, the flavanols cause release of nitric oxide, which increases blood flow to our muscles, and this allows for the glucose in our blood to be reabsorbed into the muscle cells. So cool. Health benefit number 4, the skin. Cacao has been shown to have photoprotective benefits, meaning protection from the sun. 12-week consumption of high flavanol cocoa decreased UV-induced skin erythema or redness, as well as increased skin density and hydration, as well as decreased skin roughness and scaling. Here is a graphic from that study. This is a high-frequency B-scan ultrasound showing an increase in skin density after consuming the cocoa beverage for 12 weeks. And here is a rendering of the skin surface profile before and after the same protocol. The researchers concluded, quote, "This study demonstrates that the regular consumption of a beverage rich in flavanols can confer substantial photoprotection, as well as help maintain skin health by improving skin structure and function. The photoprotection offered by cocoa flavanols is within the range of that reported for dietary carotenoids, such as beta-carotene or lycopene." This data actually really reminds us of an important point. Beauty and anti-aging is often from the inside out. The consumption of dietary antioxidants like cacao, beta-carotene, astaxanthin, and lycopene is considered to be a really good strategy against photoaging, or aging caused by the sun. But don't forget the sunblock too. Health benefit number 5. Enhanced metabolic health, including enhanced oxidative metabolism and improved mitochondrial function. What on earth do we mean by that? Cacao appears to be correlated with improved mitochondrial density and function, including higher levels of products of mitochondrial respiration, things like NAD and sirtuin stimulation. Now, most of these studies were done in rodents, and the evidence is preliminary, but it is for sure promising. There is some evidence in humans, though. Take this study, for example, looking at 5 humans who were given 100 milligrams of epicatechin daily for 3 months. They saw enhanced mitochondrial bioenergetics. It has to be emphasized, though, this study was done in only 5 humans, so much more research is desperately needed on this topic. Okay, so now you've heard some health benefits of cacao, and by now you might be wondering, what's the best dose? How do I consume this cacao? Can I just pick up a dark chocolate bar from the grocery store? Is that good enough? If so, how much of the bar do I need to consume? These are all really great questions. When we talk about epicatechin and catechin content in cacao and cocoa products, the highest levels are found in nibs, then cocoa powder, then baking chocolate, then dark chocolate. There really is not much in baking chips, milk chocolate, or chocolate syrup. Honestly, if you can get your hands on some minimally processed and unsweetened cacao nibs, like the ones we got from our friends here, that would be your best bet. You can find these unsweetened cacao nibs for sale online from reputable sellers. Besides that, as a general statement, unsweetened cacao nibs, unsweetened baking chocolate, and unsweetened cocoa powder are the best dietary sources of these flavanols. Standard dark chocolate, Dutch chocolate, and semi-sweet baking chips are okay, but not the best. Lastly, I would avoid milk chocolate and chocolate syrup. They have negligible quantities of cocoa flavanols. One other thing we need to worry about is cadmium contamination of cacao. According to the CDC, cadmium at high doses can build up in the kidneys and cause kidney disease, as well as fragile bones. Technically, cadmium is considered a cancer-causing agent. Cadmium accumulates in the body because of its long half-life of about 10 to 35 years. This means the older we get, the more cadmium we have stored in our body. Unfortunately, the U.S. government has not set a limit for cadmium in supplements or foods. The European Union, however, has established a cadmium limit of 0.6 micrograms per gram of cocoa powder. Reputable sellers will have their products tested for cadmium levels and publish their information freely. Sometimes it's a little more difficult to find. Lucky for us, Consumer Lab does some of this work, and they've published brands that are low in cadmium. They share that most cocoa powders they tested violate this European limit on cadmium levels. So we've got to choose our cacao really carefully. Moving on to the amount needed per day, it varies depending on the specific health benefit you're going for. Consumption of 40 grams of dark chocolate can lead to increased epicatechin in the bloodstream 2 hours after consumption, and at this time we do see improvements in blood flow. When we're looking at actual doses of cacao flavanols, though, it depends on the concentration of cacao in whatever we're consuming. The higher the cocoa content, the higher the flavanols. So for cardiovascular health, we should be taking about 200 to 900 milligrams of flavanols per day. For blood sugar or insulin improvement, about 200 to 600 milligrams per day. For memory or cognitive function, about 500 to 900 milligrams per day. Lastly, for skin benefits, around 320 milligrams per day. How does that translate to real life, you might ask? Let's take this Choco Love chocolate bar, for example. It's extra strong dark chocolate with 70% cocoa content. Within this bar, if you consume 1/3 of the bar, you consume 23 grams of cocoa, which translates to 279.3 milligrams of flavanols. That's a pretty good start, and you get this by consuming 1/3 of this chocolate bar. In regards to cacao nibs, 3 tablespoons of nibs on average will give you anywhere from 550 to 670 milligrams of flavanols. Lastly, you could take a cacao flavanol supplement like this one here. I'm not affiliated with them, but I know they make a great product. These deliver a reliable amount of flavanols and are also very low in cadmium. Okay, it's a wrap. I really hope you learned something valuable and useful from this video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to show us some real support, subscribe. We love hearing from you, so let me know what you think of this video. Tell me if you're planning to increase cacao and cocoa flavanols in your life, and if so, how do you plan to do it? Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and aloha.